Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Shergok, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at why Remedios is so arrogant and so idiotic at times, and how Neia Baraja might actually become like her. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. Remedios Custodio was never the brightest candle on the cake, and actually not even on the cake. The reason why she is the way she is and acts the way she does is because she has a self-contained worldview that cannot be changed from the outside anymore. And this is in part because of her personality, but also in part because Remedios Custodio, like the overwhelming majority of the population of the Holy Kingdom, adheres to a faith based on the four gods of earth, air, water, and fire. This is in stark contrast to the theocracy of Slain, which is based on a system of 6 gods. And the origin of both religious movements seems to lie with those 6 players who came to the New World 600 years ago and saved humanity from certain death at the very last second, giving them the gift of magic as a way to defend themselves against the monsters of this very world. And the 6 players consisted of 4 human players and 1 elven player, as well as a heteromorphic undead player named Surshana. And the 4 human players were associated with the elements of air, earth, water and fire, while Shoshana represented death and darkness, and the elven player represented light and life. And due to the fact that these 2 players were not human, almost all nations, except for the theocracy of Slain, who indeed pretends that these 2 were humans to their own citizen, removed these 2 beings from their pantheon over the centuries. So only the 4 human players continued to be worshipped as gods. And no one would know today that they were once players, or what players actually are. This of course has led to many religious conflicts with the theocracy, and Remedios is also firmly entrenched in their belief in the 4 gods. In other words, her religious teachings are set in stone and are not questioned or just interpreted, and Remedios has fared quite well with this worldview. She is a natural talent when it comes to swordsmanship and left the thinking part to her smarter sister, Custodio. And her strong faith gives her an unwavering will to endure even the greatest hardships and pain to fight for justice. And this is also reflected in her devout loyalty to the Holy Queen Kalka Besaris. And Kalka, due to her status as the Holy Queen, is also a religious authority. Therefore her position, thoughts, and political demands are also of religious significance to Remedios, and it is essential for her to follow Kalka's words and instructions to the letter, and never question them. And this is where the problem lies. The literal following of supposedly divine laws and rulers, who are completely honest and genuinely want the best for everyone, still reaches its limits, when reality doesn't work the way religious scriptures say it should, or in this case, the orders of the Holy Queen. In other words, Remedios' stubbornness stems from her desire to do only what is right, and anyone who does not want to do what is right is either evil or has not understood that everyone simply needs to do the right thing for everything and everyone to be fine. And again, as far as we know, her faith is based on the mistaken assumption that the 6 or rather the 4 players who came to the New World in their in-game avatars were divine beings. But again, Remedios doesn't know that, and she can't question or interrogate her own religious text and scriptures for such things. And of course she wouldn't do such a thing because this would be blasphemy. So in this sense for her, any deviation from religious dogma is also a sin and a step towards evil, so she can't step away from it. And this is exactly why Remedios is so inflexible and rigid in her views, and why she can be essentially checkmated on a mental level. For if her queen orders Remedios to do everything to protect the lives of the weakest members of society, the poor, poor children, and to never endanger their lives, even during a war, then, from both Kalka's and Remedios' perspectives, there's only the best of intentions here, and no ill will. But what if the children are held hostage by the enemy faction, which then demands that all combat operations against them cease? In that case, Remedios cannot fight evil without endangering the children, which again would be evil, and therefore it can't be done. And she cannot save the children, which she has to, without fighting the evil that she can't fight anymore. In other words, due to this logical flaw in her faith, Remedios can essentially crash like a computer in the real world. She could freeze like a computer because of logic errors and let's put it that way, a very, very limited amount of processing power. And this story, this aspect of Remedios, not only has a pretty clear warning against dogma, but I think it also has a connection to Japanese society, because just as it is customary in Germany to still use fax machines and overhead projectors and to essentially keep technological advancement away from offices and institutions because that's how we've always done it, Japan has a similar problem with its stamps and fax machines as well, which many Japanese companies, offices, and bureaus still suffer from. It's this inflexibility, even if it fails clearly, and the inability of those in power to address this failing that is criticized here in this very metaphor of Remedios. And thus Remedios' character also has a meta level to it, meant to highlight the problems of stubbornness and blind dogma. But it goes even further, because the sad part of this whole story is not only Remedios, but this goes even further, because the sad part, apart from Remedios being in it, of this entire story is that Neia Baraja, and this is something that is rarely mentioned in the discussion about Overlord, becomes over the course of the story and over the course of her experiences a sort of Remedios Custodio 2.0. Let me explain briefly. When Remedios Custodio and her troops halted their attack on a small town occupied by the enemy, after the enemy threatened to eliminate human children and the rest of the hostages as well, if the previously successful offensive wasn't immediately halted, Remedios, torn between her oath, her faith, her worldview, and her fear of endangering the children, desperately searched for a solution, but she still halted the advance, much to the delight of the enemy. But after ideologically boxing herself into a corner and seeing no way out, she became increasingly enraged, uncontrollable, and more desperate and illogical. And in a similar way, Neia Baraja found herself at a similar point during the story. When Einzel, gone after a long and grueling battle with the demon Emperor Yaldabaoth, or at least the supposed demon Emperor Yaldabaoth, fell, defeated from the sky, apparently gravely wounded, and landed somewhere deep, deep in enemy territory, far, far away in the hills of Rebellion, which were firmly in Yaldabaoth's hands. Neia Baraja was gripped by the same religious panic, the same crisis in her worldview, the same desperation, the same terror, and the same helpless, furious, and irrational anger that Remedios displayed when her own offensive was halted. So even though Remedios Custodio acted very foolishly, irrationally, and narrow-mindedly, and was therefore rightfully ridiculed and despised by the Overlord community, especially because she treated Neia Baraja so abysmally, Neia, in that critical moment when Einsolgon fell from the sky before her own eyes, the man she admired for solving her problems, apparently have failed. In that very moment, Neia's health had become just as bad as Remedios, with her demands and her screeching. It was like watching Remedios' personality and character flaws mirrored onto her. And I want to emphasize at this point that this escalation happened relatively early on her religious journey, even before she massively converted people and held sermons in public places in the name of Einsolgon, whom she now worships as justice. By the time of the events at the end of Season 4, which play out after the events of the Holy Kingdom, when the capital city of Riestais received the declaration of war from the Sorcerer Kingdom, Neia and her signature was among the most important ones on the declaration, because other nations, such as the Empire under Emperor Jerknov, again just a puppet, but also the Dragon Kingdom and the Dwarven Kingdom, supported this declaration of war as well. And for the Holy Kingdom, Neia Baraja co-signed this declaration of war in support of Eins Olgon, which means that she had now way more power and largely converted the Holy Kingdom to her own faith and became such a central religious authority that despite only being a squire just a few months or at least a year prior, and not even a fully fledged paladin, she ascended so much that she was able to sign the documents with her own signature. She became extremely powerful in her own right, under the hidden tutelage of Eins Olgon's minions, and therefore she now stands in line with the Regency Council, which represents the Dwarven King in his absentee, with the Queen of an entire nation, the Queen of the Holy Kingdom, Draudilon Riculus, and Emperor Jerknov. Neia therefore has likely deeply entrenched herself even further into this Remedios mindset, and had become solidified in her worldviews. In other words, even though we as the viewer find Neia somewhat more likable than Remedios Custodio, which to be fair isn't that hard, because Neia Baraja can at the very least somewhat perceive Eins Olgon's ability and personality from her own perspective and from our perspective, and while she is essentially what Janus and later Fubuki or King are in One Punch Man, the ones who are the only ones to understand how strong Saitama is, Neia, because of this, loses that more objective and rational view of the world that she once had, and drenched herself in religious fervor. In other words, while in most anime, we usually see the protagonist first and what they can do and what they can't do, before we see sort of a dark twin or twist on the entire personality and character of the hero, that is then later introduced to the show, to show what could go wrong. But in Overlord instead, we have someone like Remedios Custodio, to whom Neia has partially already become similar. And that is kind of tragic. And just like Remedios, Neia will now take the words and actions of a player, Eins, as a divine command and as pure justice, even though we know how often Eins Olgon is himself uncertain what to do. And with all of that said, now it's your turn. What do you think about Remedios Custodio and how Neia Baraja slowly becomes a miniature version of her? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks again to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and as usual, special thanks to Other Daddy Other, ASK, Bad Guy Ye, Bad Burrito 316, Bezer, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 022Ron, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Dan Pep, Dragonlord Placido Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Lelouch V. Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Lofrazer, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh hell no, Normal Toad, Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Pedipantum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Cune Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, Diorg Warboss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Zinukai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.